Ladies and gentlemen, we do thank you very much for your attention, and now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the
Welcome to our top travel destinations. I am your host, Kevin Flanagan. I have been editor of the weekly travel news column in the Sunday Independent and the Fine Wine and Food Guide, and I am here to use my decades of experience to help you know exactly where to stay, eat, drink, shop, and explore when visiting the world's top travel destinations. So sit back and enjoy the wonders of travel as we take off on our magical journey together. Welcome to Kevin's Top Travel Destinations. And this week, we are going to go somewhere a little bit different. You will all have heard of the Camino Way, that incredible, heavily trafficked pilgrimage walk from Canterbury Cathedral all the way down to Compostela de Santiago, and the famous church, and possibly the most popular tourist route for pilgrims in the world. Hundreds of thousands go every single year. It's turned into sort of an industry all on its own. Now, I'm not saying anything against the Camino de Santiago. It is one of those really, really great walks. But if you want something a little different, remember, parts of the Camino have now been compared to visiting Venice. You get in line and you shuffle along because there are so many people doing it, particularly as the world becomes more conflicted and uncertain. People need spiritual sustenance. It's not enough to have TikTok and Instagram reels to soothe your troubled soul. No, people are going on walks like the Camino, but the Camino's almost been sort of maxed out. So I'm going to introduce you to something really interesting, an alternative, which in many ways is even more beautiful. It's much less travelled, and you're in Italy, so the food and the wine and the culture and everything is just off the scale. Yes, I'm talking about the Via Francigena. It goes all the way originally from Canterbury to Rome. And the part I'm going to talk about, I went with an Irish company, the Camino Way, and they have been promoting this as an alternative to the Camino. And it's an ancient pilgrimage route, and it actually crosses from France all the way down into the Alps, down to Rome. It's been used for over 1,000 years. It's very, very different. The Via Francigena, for example, the segment I walked was from Lucca to Rome, and it's about 419 kilometers. Takes up to about maybe 20 days. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how you can break that down. The Camino, of course, varies greatly in length. Some of the classic routes that people take go up to 5 to even 800 kilometers. They're both serious undertakings, as I'm going to describe in my own journey down it. But the extraordinary thing about the Italian Camino, if you like to call it like that, is it really had this off-the-beaten-track feel. The Camino itself does enjoy a fantastic infrastructure. You've got pilgrim culture and global recognition. You've stops every night and you're going to be well looked after. There's something a little bit more edgy about the Via Francigena. Let's have a look at it. It allows you to wander firstly through less crowded routes. When we went on this, it was actually, just a couple of summers ago, it was empty for most of the day. Now, this can be an upside or a downside. People love the Camino in Spain because there's so many people there. They're all on the same journey. They're sort of escaping the horror of the phones and distractions and the 24 news cycle, which is not very, very comforting. At the Tuscan landscape you're going to go through, which is vineyards and olive groves and these incredible medieval villages and hilltop towns, from Lucca to Siena through incredible Tuscan terrain. And you're going to have this mix of ancient heritage like the Romans, the medieval villages, and this really wonderful architecture. So it's different. The other thing I'd have to say about the Via Francigena is the gastronomy and the local authenticity. You're staying in agritourism. You're eating locally. You're enjoying the region's produce, and we really did get a sense of that. The wine and the food was picked literally from local farms and local producers. You could smell the freshness, and you can actually end up in such wonderful towns as Lucca, which is a bit of a hidden gem, and of course Siena, which is one of the real wonders of the world. I think you should not die before you've been to Siena. I would strongly recommend any of those great Italian places. So there's a strong sense of this journey into Italy, starting in the north and moving into the heart of Tuscany. It really is an extraordinary adventure. The only downside is that there's not that many hostels. When we were going on this, actually stayed in hotels each night, and we were bussed out to the start of the route, and then we were picked up by a bus and taken back to the hotel and ate out in some really beautiful places. This may not suit everybody. It certainly suited me because of the places I'm going to describe we stayed in, which were beyond fantastic. But again, the Camino has that. Every night you're going to stay in a pensione, you're going to be surrounded by fellow pilgrims, you're going to get the crowd experience. The Via Francigena is much, much quieter. So we started in Lucca and we travelled southeast through Tuscany towards Siena. We did it in 7 days. You could do it self-guided. We had a guide on each part, which led to a very, very interesting first day. The first day, I have to tell you this, the group I was with my dear colleague, Clodagh. We went really walkers. I'm a very fit guy, but we went walkers as such. We were surrounded by some heavy-duty hikers. We did, I kid you not, 35 kilometres in the first day. Now, this was insanity in my way of thinking, because that's like a marathon. And if you're not used to it, this is in 25 degrees heat with no water stops by the end. And it wasn't well balanced the first day. You should start off with maybe 15 kilometers and build up. That sort of makes sense, really, doesn't it? So I was actually hobbled and nobbled for 2 days. I had to stay in San Gimignano, not a bad place to be putting your feet up, because I couldn't actually walk the next day. So do take that in mind if you're going on one of these pilgrim tours. And I'm fit and I've done a lot of running, but it was just too much, and it's a different deal. Remember, the ideal time of year to go on these pilgrim walks, whether it's the Camino or the Via, is usually spring or autumn. The weather is pleasant, the crowds have dissipated mainly, and you're going to get this wonderful change in the landscape as well as the different crops come in and out of season. What do you need? Well, you definitely need good walking boots. I had runners, not probably enough. I think you need the real deal. Very lightweight pack, lightweight clothing. And if you don't have a guide, you need your sort of GPS, and you need a battery charger for your phone, because you rely on the phone, which is bad because you don't want to be getting text messages and et cetera, and having your mind whisked back to Dublin or London or wherever you happen to live. And you've got to book your accommodation, particularly in peak season, and get fit. Do daily walking of at least 10 kilometres in the weeks leading up, 5, 10, 15, and you'll be good. We were given, after we complained and it calmed down, we were doing between 15 and 20 kilometres a day, which is fine. You'll get through 120 in the week. And it was just the highlights for me were the towns we stayed. Lucca is a really interesting old town in itself, very well worth a visit. San Gimignano is the most beautiful place I think I've ever been to. It's a famed medieval town, known for its tall towers because the two, the Guelphs and the Guelphs, had this terrible row. Dante stayed there and recorded the row, and it is just fantastic. And for me, as an art historian, having done that as my primary degree, it was incredible to think when Michelangelo went from Florence to Rome, he walked these very fields. I can remember putting my hand into the rich soil of a vineyard and just thinking, Leonardo passed here, Michelangelo passed here. It's just amazing, the whole thing. Now, we did pass a waterfall, which is located near San Gimignano. I'm going to do a separate podcast on that because it was the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen and the most incredible experience. So I'm going to really encourage you. If you do the Via Francigena, it's called the Route 92. Just look that up. It's from San Gimignano to the incredible walled town. What time should you walk? I think early morning is great. You're going to have cool air. You're going to have energy. There's fewer tourists. Once it gets into the heat of the day, it's tough going. And sometimes on the Via, there's not that many places that you may take respite from the sun. And again, it's not as heavily populated. It's not as commercialized as the Camino. That's good and that's bad. And you do get these incredible thunderstorms. I remember as we had to take shelter in one of the most violent thunderstorms and lightning I've ever seen in all my life, when there was a flash flood all around us. Quite extraordinary. So you are in the wilds, you are in the wooded areas, you are sometimes quite on your own as you go down these paths, and they're well signposted, and it is slowly becoming more popular. And why it's a must? Well, I think it's such a refreshing nature break. Early in the journey, you've got these woodland streams, the sound of water, this incredible countryside, the Tuscan countryside beyond the towns. You're not just walking between villages, you're walking through this really incredible living landscape of vineyards and actual working farms. So the visual and the sensory contrast is really incredible. It's more interesting than the Camino in many ways. And the fact that you're doing it, we are not just tourists, almost like a crowd leading to a football pitch or a football match. There's none of that. It's so quiet. But the critical thing is, this is a 1,000-year-old pilgrimage route. It's soaked in history, and you've got Italian towns and Italian cuisine and Italian people and Italian guides. As long as you're fit, as long as you're well, really do consider this as an alternative to the Camino. It will be cheaper. It will be less crowded. And what are you going to get? Well, this is what I got from doing that walk over 7 days. Even though we were bussed here and thither, and for the purists that may not be such a great idea, but I love that. I love the fact that there was a van taking you out early in the morning after you've had your breakfast, and a van picking you up late afternoon. You do your 8 hours walking regardless, and they take you back to a nice hotel, and you can usually go to one of these agriturismo restaurants where they're going to serve you the real deal, the real lunch, the real dinner, the real food that comes from that area you've just walked through. There's nothing quite like it. The wine, even the water, it's all natural from that area. And I really, really did love that. If you're not used to walking these 8 hours every day, you get into a rhythm, and slowly but surely, if you've turned your phone off, and luckily quite a lot of those areas are a little bit poor on reception, you find your brain goes into a different spot, and slowly you get the sense of what it must have been like 1,000 years ago, when life was hard. No phones, no mobiles. You may not even be sure of your next meal. There were brigands and villains who would ambush pilgrims, and you were doing this for a higher cause, because there was a belief. It wasn't just TikTok, it wasn't just Instagram, it wasn't the capital commercial impetus that drives us today. It was about finding your soul. The soul resides in us, whether we like it or not, and one day we've got to account for ourselves. I believe that. And going on one of these walks is such a way to prepare yourself. It's such a way to connect to that silence, which actually, after a while, speaks to you.